Good morning. I'm going to call the Board of Water and Wastewater Commissioners meeting to order. It's July 29th, 2021, 11 a.m. And those present, Judith, Maureen, John, and Alan are here. First order of business is the consent agenda on the minutes of July the 15th, 2021. I'd entertain a motion.
Make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
It is a unanimous vote. Abatements. 7 Joshua Jethro Road. The applicant is looking to have $516.58 of his water bill hardened. They had a toilet leak over a period of time. I guess he hasn't been in the house for over 2 years and did not know that it had a leak until he received the current bill. Okay. Open for discussion.
Just getting familiar with the background. The zeros on usage in the last few years of history, would that indicate the water's shut off, like seasonally or something?
Yeah, no usage. Yeah, there was no usage.
So that means they probably actually shut the house down completely? Would that be the only way, or?
Yeah.
Or not come.
Yeah.
Yeah. I might just not be here for the winter.
Oh, okay.
Or you can't tell?
No, not unless they call us and have us come to shut it off. Well, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like there was regular, consistent use through 2017, and then it looks like the March and June bill starting in 18, they weren't using consumption, then they do register again. So it looks like they were somewhat seasonal occupancy of the house for 2018, 19, and then 20 as well.
In the letter, the gentleman, he hasn't been in the house in over 2 years and did not know it had a leak until he received the water bill.
And was that for 1 quarter then?
Yeah, the bill
551
551 is for 1 quarter, yeah. 108,000 gallons.
And is he in financial need?
I don't know anything about it, but, you know, for me, my feeling is that you owe it to yourself to keep track of your own house, your own property, and if you have somebody to look in on it. So, I just can't rise to the occasion personally.
I agree with you. I mean, if he had been living in the house and it didn't,
Talk about it.
I think it's a good commendation for moving to quarterly billing, because we've been a lot more.
a lot more, that's true.
The only thing that seems odd to me is that the last quarter in 2020 was high. Well, not high compared to this, excuse me, customer's usage. And, you know, somebody had to either turn the water on or start using the water for it to accumulate to 108,000 gallons.
That, I believe, is the toilet leaking, you know, just running constantly.
But the thing is, then it...
And besides using it, you mean?
Well, there's a bill 12/21/2020 heard 24,
Right, and then there's a zero bill,
and then there's, so somebody had been in there in that quarter.
right,
Yeah,
clearly.
amazing.
Yeah, I moved, no, John, do you have?
I just say, I think they should have shut it off at the meter, so. I go along with everybody else.
Yeah, shut it down.
Make a motion to reject
All right.
the abatement request at 7 Joshua Jethro Road for $516.58.
I have a second.
Second?
You moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Judith?
Aye.
Noreen?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Okay, it's denied. All right. Moving right along. Next, new business. Water Department capital plan.
So we had put this on the agenda with our two newest members coming on board. We hit it hot and heavy at first with rates, rules, and regulations. And now to justify those regulations or rates that we just voted to put into place, we felt it was appropriate to go through the capital plan. So what you have in the packet, several years ago, the Board of Water Commissioners at that time had revised the capital plan. There were a couple policies that the board adopted at that time. One being that any changes to the Water Department's capital plan would need to be done through unanimous vote of the Water Commission. And that also we would be looking to fund items within our capital plan through retained earnings contributions and obviously debt where applicable and needed. The retained earnings contributions, the board had voted to do a 10% budgeted surplus in our revenue for those retained earnings contributions. So for their budget being around this past year, 4.3 million, that would equate to about 430,000 that we would be looking to contribute each year to support those articles. So you can see in the first kind of spreadsheet, capital plan FY20 through FY31. This was voted and adopted in 2018 by the board. And we've knocked off a handful of things on that list. Those are reflected in red. And then looking towards our out years, you can see we have a couple of bigger projects coming up. One of the things that did change from when we created this document initially was the cost, one, of the Route 28 water main project. That project has gone from an original estimate several years ago at $2 million, going under the assumption $1 million a mile, which can be applicable but not on a state road. We're now looking at about a $7 million construction project for that Route 28 water main. The new well construction proposed for FY23 is a continuation of the new source exploration that is currently underway. The contract was signed a couple meetings ago. And then we have two vehicle replacement items for FY23 as well. There's one of the Ford Rangers that we have, and then the F-250 that we have as well. Looking out to FY24, we do have every 5 years a placeholder for pavement management plan. The first time we did that, I think it was 2018 or 19, and that's what afforded us to repave this T1 main office facility here. And the other roads at the other pump stations would be looking to do, with those funds in 5-year increments. We also have a placeholder looking at FY25 for repainting the Pleasant Lake tank. At that point, the tank will have hit, I believe it's 20-year life expectancy. The paint for those tanks in the Cape Cod environment, we're out in a peninsula over the ocean. The salty environment can be pretty harsh on storage tanks, so if your 15 to 20-year lifespan is what you'd expect to get off this. We're looking for that, and what we did during this development of this plan was try to parse out what we could fund with retained earnings and what we felt we may have to do for some of the bigger projects. You'll see notes like bond $500,000, or for example, let's see, Pleasant Lake Ave tank project, we had bonding $1,750,000 of that was proposed to come from retained earnings. Moving on, FY25, another vehicle replacement. FY26, we have a pipe discontinuity upgrade. So what that is, there's a number of areas in town. Route 28 is an easy one to explain. Coming from Chatham, the water main can go from 10 inches down to 8 inches, up to 12 inches, and you lose, there's head loss that you experience in the flows, so we can have flow issues. So there's a number of discontinuity projects that need to be done around town to kind of straighten out the piece part job that was done over the years. So that's to cover a number of those, 5,900 feet of those. FY28, we had talked, is it last year or the year before, about we detected MTBE, or methyl tertiary butyl ether. It's a petroleum byproduct. We did detect it in trace amounts at the well that's right behind where we store all the fleet, the equipment. Given that it's a petroleum byproduct, it is likely a product of our operation being here on this site. So at the time the pet cemetery thing was going down, the town administration said, does anyone have potential use for that parcel? At that time, we did a quick kind of site analysis to see if we would be able to hit our operation there. It did look like we are able to do that if it works out that way. Ultimately, the town's policy with respect to capital plan is that we're really only supposed to be changing the out year, that 7th year of our plan. So the relocation of the headquarters was to be added out beyond the 7-year plan that we had. So that's why you're seeing it there. That could be, the ultimate goal is to prevent contamination from our operation at the wells here. That could be done either by relocating everything to a different site, or if we had an adequate, building here that had the appropriate drainage, we could store everything inside. That could be another option. But nonetheless, still currently slated for FY28. We have another vehicle replacement in 30 and construction of the new Route 39 tank in fiscal year 31. I don't know if that's a good stuff to break for conversation.
Enough information for you.
A bunch.
So that what I did and what's not in the packet, I was working to update the packets that were handed out today, the proposed rate structure alternative G kind of dashboard, and then I also included the capital improvement planner, which is the background that informs this table. So it is slightly different than what we looked at previously. What I did was went through and updated some of the capital costs, the biggest one being the Route 28 water main project. We had the $2 million placeholder in there previously, so bumping that up to 7 and accounting for the debt payments on that. I believe that was the biggest change to this. So.
Thank you for making them big, too.
Yeah.
Lifesaver.
I have a few different areas of questions. Just surface level. So on this sheet, the intent, of course, is to plan ahead and retain earnings. So when you decide to bond something, does that mean that the yearly payments that you make come out of retained earnings?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they would be taken on as debt
Right.
for, the water department operation. So if we, for example, the Pleasant Lake tank project that we have for $1.75 million, the $750 would come out of retained earnings, and then we'd take a 20-year note on the million that would equate to about I think those are about $120,000 annual debt payment that would get tacked on to our operating budget.
Oh, okay, so the annual payments would come out of your operating
Right.
budget? Oh, that's interesting. All right. Different category. So, this says that you've already, I mean, the red, I guess, means done or approved.
Appropriate.
So that says FY '22. So when you go this fall to capital plan discussions, won't you be discussing FY '22? Have I got my fiscal years?
Yeah, we're
Messed up.
currently in fiscal year '22,
Oh, that's right, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
as of
All right.
July 1. Yeah, so
Right.
we'll be
Slip from
requesting.
finance committee there for a few years, yeah, okay. So you'll be going for FY '23?
Right.
Yeah, okay, sorry about that, that was a little, now, I read, somewhat through all of the capital request forms, and that was very helpful. And so my confusion comes on the Route 28 water main replacement, and it's probably just language, but on the cover sheet, you say it's from Lothrop to Herring. That was the original cover
The
sheet.
original, yeah.
Then on the request form itself, it says
Lower County.
Lower County.
Yeah.
Okay, and then someplace else, it says, I'm not sure, I saw it someplace else again. So what are we doing, bottom line? Is
So
it-
we're coming in Harwich Port, where Lower County Road splits off to the left by the post office.
Right.
That's where we're proposing to start the water main replacement.
Right, Lower County there, yeah.
Initially, the scope was to take it from Lower County to Lothrop, because we had
Right.
a series of breaks, there were 5 breaks
Right.
there. Then we had some additional breaks that went to expand into the Herring River Bridge.
Right,
And then with the Mass DOT pavement project that goes from the Herring River Bridge to the Dennistown line
Right.
is the last section.
Right.
So the project expanded quite a bit since the development of that form that you have in your hand. And
I
then
see.
subsequently, since we submitted the capital plan forms that you were looking at,
Right.
now what has been ultimately, what we're planning to do.
right. So this 7 million is to cover Lower County to the Herring, no, right to the Dennis?
Town line.
But there are some savings on that because of DOT, right?
Yes.
So that's,
Dale, we won't be paid, so, yeah, the big saving there for us, right? So traditionally, what we would have to do and what we will have to do for the original scope from the Herring River Bridge to Lower County, we're
Right.
gonna have to do a much more robust
Right.
road restoration
Mhm.
after we put our pipe in.
yeah,
We are gonna lobby Mass DOT to allow us to do a more temporary patch because they're gonna be coming back and paving, in 2024.
Right.
So there's gonna be a big savings on our cost for that section
Yeah.
to do it because we're timing it in front of DOT.
okay. And without going too deep, what happens like with the bridge? I'm only familiar like with Muddy River and stuff like that, and what a nightmare, that was in terms of permitting and all of those organizations. Does the water department take the lead with all of those
Doing,
permits and everything to get over the bridge?
so where we'll be replacing in kind, we don't have to.
Mhm.
There isn't like a Mass DOT bridge evaluation and permit and there isn't, we
Okay,
don't have to do it.
yeah.
Ultimately. And I think that's part of why they're stopping where they were,
Mhm.
and why when we were doing, when we did the Lower County Road Water Main project that was being done in advance of the sidewalk project that DPW had proposed,
Mhm.
the reason we couldn't use TIP funds and state monies was because we would have had to widen that
Right.
bridge, which would have been a whole, multi-million-dollar project in
Huge.
itself.
Yeah.
So, like when we did the water main project, we didn't modify the bridge, we just, stuck our pipe in the existing hole underneath
Okay.
and didn't have to go
Good.
through that process. So, We would likely look to be doing the same thing here. That said, if we were going to propose anchoring the pipe off the, cantilevering it off the side of the bridge as opposed to where it is now, we would have to do that structural analysis, and it would be on the water department to do.
Okay, last question of this type. So when I read through the sheets, I must have missed the relocation one. I really didn't realize that, so we're actually contemplating a move of the entire water department to
Yeah, I mean,
the fleet only?
For me, I think if we should keep crew, staff, and fleet together.
Right,
Now that we've detected MTBE here,
right.
For me, that's, albeit trace amounts, it's evidence of our
Right.
being here. So it could either be, yes, relocating ourselves to a different facility. It could also be taking down these, the garage and the auxiliary buildings here, building a proper space building with proper storage so that the machines that
I see.
have we grease
Yeah.
the machines.
Right.
When, it rains here, you drive through a puddle,
Yeah.
the undercarriage of your truck, to,
They'd be able to put a oil separator in, and
Right.
to have it on buildings.
right, so we could have an oil separator in the building. Many years ago, we had to fill the floor drains in all the buildings out
Right.
here because they just went floor drain into the ground, which can't have trucks parked.
Right.
I hate to think of adding a project like moving the entire operation, and building a brand new building. But if that came about and we had to do that, 1.5 million doesn't even seem to, barely scratch the
The
surface.
space building, we're efficient over here. So, we wouldn't be proposing like the masonry building. My thought is if we were gonna do something to that effect, our crew would do the earthwork for the slab, the oil water separator. We could dig the trench for the foundation and have a foundation company come in and pour it, and kind of GC it ourselves.
yeah.
With, the exception of the, erecting the steel and putting the panels on. Those buildings are pretty cheap, I think.
Yeah, all right.
So, I would like to hope.
Shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But thought being that we could, not, if we did it here, right, if we did a building here, we wouldn't have to
yeah, that I could
change
see.
all
Yeah,
this,
Yeah, right.
If we were doing something over on Great Western and wanted to relocate the entire office
Right.
and build a facility like the DPW, it wouldn't even be that big, but
Yeah,
where they have their, price would be considerably
And
different.
do they still have space?
At-
At DPW?
Not within their
I mean,
building
no,
footprint,
no,
but like
I
on
mean,
the parcel itself?
That's
Yeah.
unused?
Oh, there's plenty of land.
Yeah.
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 of course, there might be a wastewater treatment plant there someday too, so.
True, yeah, you never know, but.
That would be
Yeah.
convenient, right?
That was good here. Well, thank you for all of that
You know,
information.
while we're on this
Yeah.
subject, if there's any chance that the department would do that, I think we should put the board of selectmen on notice to reserve that property.
I mentioned it when they asked.
Well, I think we should formally, commission.
Good idea.
send
Yeah.
Formal.
send a-
Because real estate and open space evaluated the parcel, I think on behalf of the selectmen. I submitted a written response stating our interest.
Yeah.
They stated our interest to the selectmen, not with the recommendation to transfer it to the water department, but to retain it should we want to use it in
Oh,
the
so
future.
it's on record.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
put a formal notice in the file that says that there is an interest.
Right.
Not
Yeah, he
right
did.
away.
But we could, again too, if we wanted to do a space building here, we could
Right.
do that as well,
Yeah.
and could be less of a move, wouldn't disrupt the office.
Yeah.
you know.
Right. Well, if for some reason we had to move, that's a great spot because it's near a lot of other town stuff, so.
And does that mean that this, just thinking ahead, that this area here could not be used for other things? Or do you think it's just
It'd be
our
limited,
particular, I mean, could the town use it for housing, for example?
Oh, I don't see
yeah, I
that.
don't think, yeah, because the well, I mean, the well.
It's too close to the well.
Yeah.
Yeah, sacred land.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
no, I'm,
Pet cemetery.
I wanted to ask
Pet
before
cemetery.
somebody,
Yeah.
or the pet cemetery, that would,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
a pretty valuable piece of land.
Yeah.
Um,
So, my last question, and I think you and I, Dan, had an email about this. So I was looking back, it's impossible to keep track of all the COVID grants, the other grants, the organizations, but there was one, I think this was the one, this was from an executive order in June, and I think this was the one that helped get that 5 million for the wastewater things.
Yeah.
But of course, now I'm thinking about water, and I was wondering, you know, if there was any way we could apply for any uses for the water portion of the water wastewater department through that county money. I mean, they, you know, looking at the capital plan, they talked about, you know, water infrastructure projects as well, and I guess, you know, now that we got a little for wastewater, I'd like to get my hands
Yeah.
on some more for water, you know.
Yeah.
My understanding is that Carol did review
Uh-huh,
the current debt for the projects that we have, that we're making payments on. and
Right.
We weren't,
Right.
we weren't eligible. I will have to
Mhm.
reach out and confirm that. I know, I think Sandy had a conversation with her about it, because they had looked, and I think one of them was for the tank, but because we're leasing cell equipment on top of the tank, it doesn't make us eligible. That was the-
you know, as I say, these are starting, there are so many, you know, I don't know how Carol does it, quite honestly, but I'll give you this if you want, because
Yeah,
I
that-
can't remember, okay, so you have it.
No, I don't have it. I
Oh,
was-
okay.
yeah.
See, this one I didn't think was for debt. I know the other one you're talking about, but maybe it is the same one, but you can glance at it at your leisure. I was thinking that might be the one where the 5 million came from, the county one. But, you know, they all use the same language, they're all labeled, you know, better water, it's,
Yeah.
so, that's all, that's my final thing on just,
Yeah.
that started way back with the CARES Act. So, you know, there's a lot of money left kicking around in the country, and,
Why shouldn't some of it show up?
That's great.
Yeah.
so I guess I'm over my initiation then.
Oh, I'm with you, believe me. I have the same thought process. When I look at all that needs to happen,
Yep,
you know, and,
And I, you know, to that end, Alan, there's a lot that needs to happen, and by no means does this list that we're looking at capture all of it.
right,
And, you know, there's no way that we could fund it all in the short term and have rates be sustainable or,
Right.
you know, acceptable. That said, there's other projects, and when we can apply for grants, you know, those are opportunities to knock off those kind of laundry list items. For example, the grant for the coastal resiliency grant for Lothrop.
mhm,
That's a project that wasn't on our capital plan. It's a great project to do. It's a vulnerability in the system, having that pipe above grade in through the salt marsh. You know, those are, I am hoping that we can use grant funding more to kind of knock off those small
yeah,
projects that, you know, kind of get overlooked or don't make the cut.
Right.
Because we're gonna replace the tank before we replace that water main.
what's the date on that, on the one I just gave you?
June 3rd.
Okay, that's all I need, thanks.
you know, the problem here is that we're fast becoming an antique shop,
Yeah,
and the money doesn't flow fast enough to replace the antiques. So,
well, I mean, maybe we should talk about that for a second, since, you know, Washington seems like they might pass something. Is there anything that we are shovel-ready for?
I think I've talked to GHD about that,
Mhm.
specifically with thoughts on the Route 28 project.
Right,
Because that's going to be pretty shovel-ready pretty quick. We have a kickoff meeting with, they've already been working on it,
yeah,
but we have a first sit-down here, I think next Thursday, maybe it's tomorrow, might actually be tomorrow.
Tomorrow Saturday,
Friday.
Friday. I don't know.
I wish it was Saturday, but.
Yeah, it's either tomorrow or next week, to go through that. I'm hoping that could be considered a shovel-ready project.
Right.
I am hoping that for wastewater topic, Route 28, same area, at least from the Herring River Bridge to the Dennistown line, that we could save a considerable amount of money by
Right.
putting the dry pipe in right now.
Yep.
We'd put that pipe in knowing it won't be used for some time, but it would
Stay.
save us the road restoration costs when we
Yep.
do need it. I think that for relatively small dollars could become shovel-ready pretty fast. Those are the two, I think,
Oh.
easiest shovel-ready projects.
The one that I was eyeballing, knowing that the 28 would probably be in contention, however it went, but was actually the tower, tank painting, even though it's not in line for a few years, what's a few years?
Right.
But since that would be mostly contracted out, it seems like that could be shovel-ready almost like next week,
Yeah.
so
it
for
could.
sure.
Yeah, how much money do we need to front engineering to
Right.
get that to be shovel-ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
So, that's it for me.
I think that was great. Anybody else, Sean? You good? Yeah. Judith?
That's great.
No, it's great having new people on board.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We've listened to it year after year, so it does.
Well, I have to say you have welcomed us. I'm speaking for John again.
that's, you can.
In a really nice way.
I'm
so
just
I
still
really
learning.
appreciate it. Oh, me too. I tell you, I've already forgotten everything I learned on the tour that Dan gave me, so I should have been taking pictures or drawing a map or something, but.
Grab a hot hat and walk with them.
Yeah, it didn't get that far lost, that you will have those moments where it'll show up again, but
Hopefully.
Another thing that I did put in here on this big table, for FY21, the total revenue, the 5.267 million, that was from the budget sheet from last meeting, the water,
Oh, okay,
right here, if you look at FY21, the third column down,
okay. I got
that was the figure from the budget report from the end of FY21 fiscal year. So
Okay.
when we developed our revenue projections, it was done with the low confidence and the high confidence, and we budgeted revenue based on what we would consider a wet year. FY21 was a dry year, resulting in a much greater surplus revenue than what we had planned for. So when we do have years like that, it is going to throw money into that retained earnings account and could help us. We look at FY25, we see the retained earnings balance drop off. That's because we're have a big amount of debt coming on for a couple of projects in that time period. If we have another couple dry years, we could be out FY26 to 27. So what I'd like to do is keep this template, and as projects come on, and just keep updating these as kind of our regular review to track and put in actual, backfill everything with actual data to keep track and project.
So, on this list chart,
Yes.
just to understand it, for instance, on line number 5, when you talk about the Route 28
Yep.
job, these amounts that you're putting in, these would actually be debt payments that would be part of our operating budget?
Yes.
Okay. So, everything on this list is either funded through the operating budget or retained earnings?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
okay. Anything else?
Did I miss anything? I'm trying to think.
No.
And there is, so we do also have there's a, I guess, third plan. There's a water system master plan that was completed in 2012. That's where that pipe discontinuity project came from. So there was a water system master plan that was developed in 2012 that laid out timing, cost for the infrastructure projects. Having said that, things come up that take precedent over what was planned in 2012. And so we stick to it the best we can when things come up that have to be pushed out for whatever reason. That's why we kind of went with the 10-year plan. As things kind of shift, the town requires us to submit a 7-year capital plan. We need to think a little bit broader terms than that. So,
You know, one of the things about the water is over the years, you know, every single project that got done, all the revenue went through the general fund, and the water department had to go to town meeting. So there would be years where they'd have a petition article for water to be installed on road besides what the water department put forth. Well, in those years, get what you could out of, general budget. Some roads ended up with, 2-inch mains, 4-inch mains, 6-inch mains where there should have been a 10-inch main. Some places have no hydrants, and, it was just a cheap job. And those places, this discontinuity, to go back and fix, where they, smaller pipe, cheaper price, larger pipe, more expensive. So there's all kinds of those all over town. I mean, in any area of the town. So they're all, as we get fully developed and, more people, use the water system, they're going to rear their ugly heads. And so again,
I've been hearing you say that for many years, Alan, but now I'm starting to see it and understand it more.
Sure.
Because, all I can think about is, how many old meters must there be? I mean, I'm looking at my old meter now.
Well, we're a lot better there, because the department has attempted to upgrade.
Yeah.
And we do get an opportunity, to replace. One of the things was the new technology in meters.
Right, that's true.
Yeah,
but old everything. Old mains and.
They figure the whole works started in 1935.
Right.
And, we've been at it ever since.
Yeah.
And that's the other side, developing in town, again, we need to, how much water will we have available if we keep that expansion?
Exactly, with the people, I was thinking about that with the people pouring in and development. The other thing I was wondering about was, it's one thing to hear, developers with, potential projects talk about, well, we're going to put a sewer hookup, for when that sewer comes by. Remember the CWMP is a changeable product. What happens, how much money do developers spend putting in those extra connections that may in fact never be used? We haven't made any promises to go down a certain street or, anything like that.
how much should they kind of putting out of their pocket to get the dry pipe in?
Yeah.
Private work's a lot cheaper than
That's
municipal
true.
work,
Yeah.
and if probably half of what it would cost us to do it,
Right.
And it's cheaper to do it now than
Yeah.
cut the road up and
Yeah.
pave it, the whole thing. But they did it in a couple of places in East Harwich. They put in, centralized treatment
Right.
for a small cul-de-sac with basically the
Yeah.
pipe coming to the
Yeah.
street so they can turn the valve when it's available.
If I was a developer in East Harwich, I would put one in too, you know,
Yeah.
because we're there, it's the first couple of planned phases, no matter what changes.
Yeah.
You know, but when I see them putting them in, you know, across town, I'm like, you know, what do they know that I don't know, you know? That might be 20 years, or it might be never,
Right.
you know? I mean, at the end of my street, I have a bill going on, they probably didn't put one in, but it just seems, you know, a little presumptuous. I'm glad that we don't have to respond to their pressure of saying,
Yeah.
you know, well, we put that in, you know, and, you know, because it probably won't happen.
Right. The water, and that's, you know, one thing that I'll be interested to see what our Water Management Act permit looks like.
Okay.
The Permit Extension Act in 2010, we've been, you know, 11 years now without a permit. One of the first things I did 6 years ago when I started was do the order to complete, which was
Yeah.
part of the permit renewal process, and they still haven't provided us with anything.
Right.
Now, in Pembroke where I live, you know, they had to stop allowing people to irrigate with town water because they ran up against their Water Management Act
Mhm.
permit, and you either can irrigate or you can't, if
Right.
we were gonna stay within the confines of the permit. So at some point, if development continues and our water rights, you know, ability to pump volumes isn't met, we're gonna have to consider what to do with irrigation
Right.
and how we wanna handle it.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I ask two questions? One, just for clarity for the public, you said you put that in 6 years ago when you started. Is that usual that it takes them a decade to respond?
No,
Yeah.
Okay,
no, it should have, the permits are 20-year permit cycles.
they're 20-year,
Yeah.
okay.
So we should have, generally, you would be working on the permit renewal prior to its expiration, that the permit would roll over to the new permit. Usually they give you another allowance every 5 years, so your 20-year permit will say, you know, you can start out with 2.16 million gallons per day. By year 5, you can go up to 2.21, year 10, you know, year 15, will increase it. But their DEP is working to impose restrictions on registered wells. So we have 14 wells, 10 of them are registered, 4 of them are permitted. Registered wells were registered, I think it was, I don't know if it was the 60s or the 80s when well registration took place, but that basically guaranteed your rights to pump a certain volume of water during, you know, per day out of that well. So with 4 wells that are permitted, they can say, well, you can pump this much out of the wells, but now that there's a drought, you have to throttle usage out of those. So that's really the difference between a registered well and a permitted well. DEP is currently working to enact legislation to allow them to impose restrictions on our registered wells. So there's a lot of water resource groups, watershed, river associations that are trying to fight irrigation, you know, outdoor water use, things like that, and they are coming for registered wells to try to accomplish that goal. Now, what that means for your normal water user is that their water bill is going to go up because the high users do subsidize the cost of water for the lower users. So that's going to be, you know, and that's usually the big PR campaign when DEP tries to impose restrictions on outdoor usage is, do you want to pay more for less? And that's what we're going to be up against at some point, you know, development, outdoor usage, permits get tighter. I did request in our permit renewal for more water. We do need more water. If last year wasn't proof of that, we violated what would have been our permit in 2010, our withdrawal volume. We're at 2.16 million gallons per day on average, which is about 750 million gallons for the year. We pump 910 million. So we're definitely in need of
But
more
is that-
water.
And that was the big difference from pre-COVID to COVID when the town population increased by
But we
a
had,
third.
even still, we had, in 2016, we pumped 830 million, 2015, I think it was 15 and 16 back to back, we were 834 million and 836 million. Last year was 910, and then we had a 700 and something year in between. So it can fluctuate. I think COVID certainly impacted our year-round, but
I think with COVID too, it was not just even having the more people, but we were all at home.
right.
You know, we weren't going off to work, you know, to other cities, you know, to drink their water for the day, so.
And, you know, we had more people here year-round,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, they didn't go to Florida, they didn't,
Yeah.
yeah.
While we're talking about those registered wells, I mean, that's original equipment. They went in, probably the first wells in 1936. Now, at some point, I know they've been rejuvenated several times. At some point, do those wells end up, you know, not usable anymore, do you think?
No, I mean, and that's one of the things that we look at here, what, you know, prompts us to redevelop the well. So the health of the well is measured by, we calculate the specific capacity of the well. Specific capacity is a function of the gallons per minute you can pump per foot of water you draw down in the well. And there's a specific capacity when the well was developed, it was first put in 30s, 40s, 50s, and then we can test that, we test it every year, and depending on what the specific capacity is compared to its original specific capacity, can tell us whether it needs to be cleaned and redeveloped. So we have some that have iron and manganese that build up. Over time, we can determine that to be true by that specific capacity. Or if we're getting lower pumping volumes, but the specific capacity remains the same, that indicates that it's something, a mechanical issue with the well itself. So with the corrosive water, some of the older impellers were of less robust material. I think the bronze ones are the ones that end up wearing over time with the corrosive water. I don't know if it's bronze. But the stainless steel ones, obviously now, the impellers, the stainless steel don't wear. So if we do the specific capacity and it says, yeah, your capacity is good, comparable with what it should be, we can do what's referred to as a shutoff head test, where we close the valve right at the discharge side of the pump, turn it on at 100%, and we can tell by the amount of pressure that it's producing pumping against the closed valve if the impeller itself is worn or not. So there's pump curves that come with the pumps that if 0 gallons per minute at 100%, it should be producing X PSI in the water main. So it's a check between, is it mechanical, which we do the shutoff head test, or if it's a, you know, the specific capacity of the well, iron and manganese building up, that's when we would go to do the cleaning and redevelopment. Now the mechanical equipment in them has changed, but the gravel pack has remained good, and really the only wells we've had to do are these small M wells out here, and then we did well 4. I think those are the only ones we've done since I've been here.
Yeah.
That have warranted, but
Yeah.
One more?
Yeah, right.
One more while we're talking about water in general, only because, it's probably a dumb question, but only because I see it in the news. Does the degradation in the ponds and lakes, or I noticed there's some talk about they're finding, you know, bacteria and things like we've had in the past, does that have any effect on our groundwater, or drinking water, or anything like that?
so I wouldn't say it has an effect on the groundwater. Now I know that there are some ponds that are like spring fed, you know, fed from the groundwater. I don't know which ones those are. My understanding is a lot of the issues that they experience with the fresh water is really nutrient loading and temperature. But I don't know that doesn't come back, you know, beyond and into us. So we would know if we were, right? So
Right.
one of the things that we are a groundwater system. There are groundwater systems under the influence of surface water, which in that would be the situation you were
If it was
describing.
going on,
So,
I see.
yeah, if there was marshland that did percolate through into water that we were withdrawing,
Yeah.
I don't know it wouldn't impact what you get at your tap per se.
I see,
If there was bacteria in there, it would be neutralized through the treatment process.
I see, that's what.
And it would be present in the tap water through chlorinated byproducts. So in Norwell, where I worked previously, we had a big marsh next to two of the wells of the treatment plant that had high organic matter. So when you treat water that's high in organic with chlorine, you have chlorinated byproducts, trihallomethanes and haloacidic acids. So we have very, very low haloacidic acids and trihallomethanes, which is indicative that we don't have organic when it's not, coming from surface water. In Norwell, we did have high levels of organic, and we had high levels of trihallomethanes and haloacidic acids.
So for now, it's a concern for the environment in the town, but not a concern for our drinking water
Right.
per se. Great, thank you.
Yeah, well, I think we do pretty well on
Yeah.
cleaning things up before it hits the tap.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, anything else? No? We good? All right. Let's move along. Wastewater update.
So just wanted to give an update to the Board of Wastewater Commissioners. We are working on the welcome packet. We did receive the stub cards from CDM Smith.
Did you get them all? Pardon me?
Phase 2, Contract 1, we've
Right.
received so far.
Okay.
I have made 2 phone calls now to Barnstable County to try to get in front of them to discuss the Barnstable County Septic Loan Program. I was able to confirm that Harwich did appropriate $100,000 for the purpose of,
5 to 2?
yes.
Okay.
So it was done, the money was voted
Yeah.
at town meeting. Now it's just getting in front of the commission to
Right.
figure out what we need to do to
I
make it happen.
shouldn't have cut you off for the public and the others to know. It's funny though, because I went back through the warrants and I couldn't find it, so it must have been buried pretty well in there, but there had been a discussion years ago about the fact that the Barnstable County Loan Program is at 5%, and 5% is kind of ancient history to us nowadays. So there was a move to lower that to 2%, which is more normal. And in the flurry of all the monies that were appropriated for everything, apparently we did go ahead. And 100,000 is plenty for a few years, because you only, give out the money as you need it. So that's great news. So
Yeah.
once we get what we
So
can tell people, I guess.
Yeah, I left a voicemail with the treasurer at the county, and I called the county administrator, on Tuesday, this was either Tuesday or Wednesday, again, follow up this week. Haven't heard back yet, but, the money has been located. Carol informed me, and,
Lovely.
So-
I looked for it.
And are there county funds that get matched, or?
well, so the county offers the loans at 5%, and my understanding is that the money that Harwich appropriated was to offset the difference between offering those loans at 2% and 5%. So there's like an administrative or an overhead fee that the town's gonna cover on behalf of its residents to lower the interest rate.
And the county's not looking to lower that interest rate?
It's it's one of
Or
those
is it
government
gonna take
rules where
3 years
it's kind of
to
like
do
our
it?
retirement, it's more like 15 years to change one, it's not an easy fix.
Still revenue for
Yeah,
them.
but to get it down there and have their nice, already set up loan program set up,
Yeah,
that's nice for the
great.
people, so.
Yeah. No, that's the septic system loan program.
Which also covers
Yeah.
sewer connections.
connection,
Right,
yeah.
And the
yeah.
engineering
Yeah.
for the
Yes,
sewer?
yeah, the whole bit,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that,
That's big,
That's
great.
great, that's
Yeah.
huge.
we just gotta get the county on some FaceTime with the county to make it happen.
Yeah.
In that vein, right now, it's looking like the earliest the order to connect letters could go out would be the last week of August. We're shooting for the 3rd week, but there was language change proposed by the town of Chatham for the IMA amendments. So the IMA working group needs to reconvene to bless those changes before it's brought then back to the individual boards of selectmen. The next board of selectmen meeting that both towns could do it at is the last week in August. So we will be waiting on that to take place for us to send the letters out.
You think, I mean, I hope they get through it that night if we're just waiting on that, but.
Yeah, I hope. And so the two big things we're waiting on is the IMA, and right now there are currently only 6 licensed utility installers on the Board of Health's list. So they have sent out to all their septic installers, they have sent out an email blast telling them, hey, we're going to be sending out these letters at the end of August. If you want to be on the installers list, submit your information, because there should be more than 6 people.
Right. Typically the Board of Selectmen's agendas, they have the summer schedule, and then unfortunately the other ones get packed. I mean, that's really important that they vote that night. Would it be helpful if a few of us showed up at the Board of Selectmen meeting for a presence, or, I would hate to see it continued a couple of weeks, because that will hold up your whole packet.
Yeah,
that
the
would
whole
be.
thing. The amendments, I would dare say, are very non-controversial.
Okay. Yeah.
And they're benefiting Harwich ultimately. So
Right.
one of them being extending the payment terms of the IMA. So the way that it's written now,
I think they vote for that.
right. So that
Yeah.
there's another one that defines ownership of the manholes or maintenance really, of the manholes on Old Queen Anne.
Right.
Because the road split half Chatham, half Harwich.
Yeah.
Chatham has elected to take care and control and maintenance of the manholes on Old Queen Anne. We shouldn't complain about that, let them do it. And the third one is just establishing the mechanism that Harwich will pay Chatham for contract operation and maintenance of Harwich's collection system, basically.
Okay.
So I don't foresee those being controversial.
Right.
That said, if I do hear that they might be,
That way,
yeah.
we'll be there.
But this is, I think they should go pretty smoothly. More on wastewater. So this week we're doing the training for the wastewater pump stations. We had the instrumentation training this morning prior to this meeting. Yesterday was the VFD training, which controls the pumps. Tomorrow's generator training on the generators, and then I think there might be one left next week. But that is to wrap up training, and then RBO will essentially be ready to turn it over to us. RJB on the second construction contract, they're still going, slightly behind RBO. They started behind RBO. The biggest, I guess, unknown on the second contract was that the telephone poles on Hardin Lane needed to be replaced to bring the electrical service into that pump station. I was informed last week that those poles have now been set, so they got to move the wires over. We also are waiting on the gas company to install the gas service for the generator that we put there. Our crew did put in a sleeve, so we don't have to cut the road, and they'll just be able to pull that gas service in. They said that they would be able to get there at the end of summer. So I think it will probably time with when they're finishing their contract. Aside from that, I think that's all I got on wastewater up here.
What, I heard, whatever recent BOS meeting, and it's just my opinion, but I know that you're looking for a dedicated meeting for wastewater again, but 90% of what I heard people talk about was the DHY agreement. And, I hope now with these contracts, closing and us going into the next stage, I hope we can start to talk about wastewater as the whole project, and not just DHY, about, everything, the operations of this, possible use of IAs through the town, I mean, everything. It just seemed like the topic started in general, and then it became 90% DHY.
I agree with you.
So,
Yeah.
if I can, and I guess touch on that,
Yeah.
right? So one of the things that we are looking to do, well, yes, and there only has really been conversation on DHY,
Right.
and that's,
Political.
yeah, really more political and
Yeah.
born out of that.
Not the
So,
engineering.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, what I have asked GHD to do, so we've been working with them on the sewer cab model. I've obviously went into some detail with them as to what we're looking to revise in the CWMP, the things we want to explore and how we want to look at them, and ask them, right now, the town doesn't have any money appropriated to pay them for services related to CWMP revisions. So I have asked them to prepare a scope based on what our conversations have been, based on what MIPA has told us, the process we'll need to do to revise the things that we're talking about revising. And my hope is that I have asked GHD to come to that dedicated wastewater meeting to go through the CWMP revision,
Right.
scope of work, in hopes that I can get the Board of Selectmen to put forward an article at fall town meeting to fund that scope of work so that we can engage in those discussions.
Right.
So, for things like IA systems, I mean, that to me, we should be looking at that not, first on cost or anything, but will IA systems work?
Right.
What do we have for technology? What watersheds could they be proposed in?
Exactly.
And what would it look like to deploy them in a certain watershed, right? Because one of the things that we look over sometimes, we talk about IAs, is the sewer pipe that's leaving your home and goes to centralized treatment is removing all of the wastewater from your property and all of the nitrogen that would be traditionally perking in. The IA systems, at least what we've talked about, can get down to maybe 12 milligrams per liter of nitrogen leaving, and these are approved systems from Massachusetts. There's a couple, I believe, nitro and nitrex that can get down below, I think, 6 or 7 nitrogen level, but we're not there. I think we should look at those ones specifically for applicability in Harwich. But where we're going from removing 100% through sewers to down to levels of, 6, 7, or 12 with an IA system, we're gonna have to sewer or IA more parcels
Right.
to accomplish the same amount of removal.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to what's the ratio of parcels that we would have to deploy these on in a given watershed for a given technology, but that's gonna take a decent amount of work to do, and right now, there's no money to do it.
Right, but also I was thinking, yes, it would take a lot of technical work to do that kind of thing, but again, this is off the track, I'm sorry, and it's just my opinion, but, we had a slew of wastewater committees over 15 years, almost 20 years, and we haven't had one for a few years. And I would hope the Board of Selectmen might at least entertain the idea that maybe it's time for a new wastewater committee, separate from everything that we do, that's
Like a
just to
community
concentrate on the
outreach.
plan, and to have, we have to focus on the sewer system that they're handing to us and operation of that. That's what, but you're being pulled in a million different directions beyond that, but it would be nice to see the community brought into the whole discussion again,
But,
under the Board of Selectmen, not
Yeah.
Yeah.
us.
the thing of it is, when I hear the discussion as far as IA system, the town of Brewster has been currently working on an area of their town where wastewater travels into Pleasant Bay. And I think there's 319 properties. And they have been on the IA system direction. And so far, the nitro or nitrex system is one that's currently being, or has been installed down in New York, some area in New York,
Long Island.
that has tentatively met
Yeah,
the 10 parts. But The other side is, according to DEP, there's no system that can meet that.
Right.
That has come around in Mass. So with Brewster, it's kind of still up in the air, they're still out there working on it. But somewhere along the way, they're working with the county level to try to address this, and it's a very expensive proposition for each home. I mean, very expensive, it's like $40,000.
Of course, remember, the idea could always be subsidized by the town because well, you know what I mean. I mean, that's for other people, but
You know,
partial
and then again,
subsidy.
you know, what happens in the future. You
Yeah.
know? He said, sometimes you think it's better to look at the hard pipe and be done with it and know that it's addressed. But all those things are out there. That brings to mind too, yesterday there was an alliance meeting and it came up that there's Harwich selectmen planning on a wastewater meeting, I believe it was August 24. Yeah. So you definitely take a seat there. I expect there'll be a lot of interesting subject matter.
But I think what she's saying is that perhaps as a commission, we could suggest to the Board of Selectmen that they revisit this kind of community advisory group that had existed.
I think there's too much for the Board of Selectmen to take on in their normal course of business.
I agree.
I agree.
Yeah, when you start having 300 pages to read.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, even when you folks talked about the agenda for the dedicated meeting, no way, I mean,
a lot.
yeah, it's too, I almost wish you could carve out the Pleasant Bay to another night.
I know.
I hope
But
somebody would
they-
make that suggestion.
And it's a lot, and it's all, and that's the thing, it's all related, and
Right.
it all like the Pleasant Bay Alliance report is gonna touch upon the new modeling results
Yeah.
from the breach in Muddy Creek, which is gonna inform attenuation rates that could suggest change towards our wastewater management plan in East Harwich that could impact how we decide to do DHY or another phase of town, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, I get you, it's a lot, and I'm trying to think of how I can boil it into something that would be.
I almost wish they could have done, and not, the Pleasant Bay Alliance is hugely important,
Yeah.
but it seems like we need that information before you talk about, I almost wish they had planned to do that on the 23rd, you know, and have Carol and whoever do that presentation, so they have that, and then start off the meeting of the 24th, you know, but,
Well, they're gonna have that, but it'll happen, as I understand, on the 24th.
right, yeah.
But we're also looking to do on the 24th, to touch on the sewer cab model. So
Yeah.
GHD has completed the first iteration of the sewer cab model.
Right.
In that, what we can show them at this meeting is where gravity will take us and where low pressure would be required
Yeah.
for, you know, conventional. That, you know, what do we want to do, you know, at that point? The board, again, or wastewater implementation committee, or some other form, but these are the decisions that need to start to be made,
Yeah.
because these are gonna impact cost and, you know, the whole rollout of the plan. You know, what I'm trying to have them look at now is, we have areas, you know, where there's low pressure defined. Can we capture another area immediately adjacent via gravity and maybe pull this low pressure, so we don't have 4 people at the end of a neighborhood with grinder pumps and everyone else has, you know, regular gravity sewers. We could not make these people have grinder pumps and sewer 4 houses, you know, over at the end of this street and get the same removal, same water result in the watershed, but now we don't have to have hundreds of low pressure grinder pumps throughout town. So I'm trying to look at that as an option, you know, but there's gonna be some low pressure grinder pumps. Has to be.
Expensive
Yes.
I know, that's,
in the maintenance one.
Yeah,
so we don't want, you know, if someone doesn't have to buy a $10,000 pump, then, you know, and we can't drive the pipe 30 feet to get them by gravity,
Right.
then if we can swap them for someone over here,
Yep.
I think that's an economical way to get to where we need to be. So I'm hoping we look at that. But, so the sewer CAD model, the
Yeah.
Pleasant Bay Alliance stuff, you know,
DHY.
DHY, and really, what I would like, I want the Board of Selectmen to tell us is, what sort of governance model do you want to pursue?
Right.
If it's IMA, then let's go pursue the IMA.
Yeah.
There's no reason, you know,
Yeah.
let's just do that. We don't, you know,
Yeah.
the plant is gonna cost what the plant's gonna cost. If they're gonna build a 2-point-something million gallon plant, it's not gonna cost us any more or less, depending on the governance. The plant's gonna cost what it's gonna cost. It's just how we as a town wanna interact with that entity.
Yeah. Well,
I think we'd like to interact with that entity.
Right.
I think that was the challenge.
Right.
That was, yeah. All right.
Thank you.
okay, Pleasant Lake Tank.
Yeah, so just update on that. Their contractors wrapping up just a couple punch list items now. They replaced the door on the inside to the control room. I had them replace the door on the outside, the main access door, because the hinges were on the wrong side. So whenever the wind comes around that tank, it takes the door and messes up all the hinges in the frame. So wrapping up a couple things on that, on the Pleasant Lake Tank project itself. And then our crew has picked up with the 24-inch pipe and brought that all the way over to the woods area, where we will this fall shut the tank off and make that final connection. We are also looking at, we do have a Waterworks bid that we're receiving on the 10th. Once we get our updated Waterworks pricing, we're looking to purchase some pipe to continue from the P Lake tank in the opposite direction. Right now, that water main leaves the tank, goes under the highway and down the tech school, through the tech school parking lot. What we want to do is connect it from out in front of the tank down towards Oak Street, where the Habitat for Humanity houses are, to bring a loop heading down towards, is it Long Pond Drive?
Yeah.
Yeah, down Long Pond Drive.
Yeah.
So we'd be looking to do that in-house as well. Right now, I think we're estimating the pipe to be about 30,000. We would be looking to spend that from within our operating budget. And really, we're looking to do some main work because the DPW is not moving forward with the way they have traditionally in the past with their pavement management plan. So we would do the crossovers prior to them paving. Where they're not paving, we're picking up and looking to do some of these main projects. So that is on the docket for this fall. And that is it for the P-Lake.
Okay. Saturn Road, land acquisition update.
So I don't recall the last time we touched on this, so if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. The owner's unknown parcels out back of here on Chatham Road. I did finally get a note from Sharon Everett of KP Law suggesting that we have the parcels surveyed and plans developed. So I have reached out to O'Reilly Engineering, but they got back to me and said the earliest they could do it is this fall. They're a couple months out. I'm gonna try, I got references from Griff over now in Brewster, but former town engineer, some other surveyors, to try to see if I can get someone in here sooner than that so we can keep the progress going. But once we have the survey, then we'd be moving to the next step of the taking.
Okay. All right, moving right along. Superintendent's report. That's pretty well done, isn't it?
Yeah.
Commissioners report. Anybody have anything?
My report kind of goes through the whole meeting.
Well, I think all of us.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. And correspondence, in the packet, we had a wonderful letter.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
That,
That was really nice.
From
That was great.
Francis Buckley, and what a nice letter that applauded our employees and our ladies in the office, and please convey my special thanks to each person I've mentioned, and I also want to thank you for hiring such a very special people and for exercising superior management skills over your department. We agree with her so wholeheartedly that appreciate every employee here.
We're very lucky.
And I'll just add that I did notice that this letter was put in Monday night's Board of Selectmen packet. So for residents who read through the whole packet, they got to see this as well, so.
Yeah. I'm not sure either, but I think that's Fran. Female? Male, Francis,
Sorry,
okay.
Mr.
Mr. Francis.
Okay, all right, and the next meeting,
Well, I have a conflict 2 weeks from now, so, I don't know what to say.
well, if you guys would want to, we could, let's see what comes up.
I'm also, just for scheduling them away the following week, which I think you are too, Dan, right? See,
Yeah.
that part I got down,
Yeah.
you know.
Do we have anything urgent? Do we have urgent?
The bid opening on the 10th for the Waterworks materials,
Yeah,
so we would want to get that processed, at least so we can get, everything's long lead time,
so
Right.
so we can get,
if we aim for the 12th, no?
The 12th, I just don't see how I can make. I got a 10 o'clock and a 1 o'clock. And if it's something that doesn't require me, fine, or I tried to move the 10, I couldn't do it,
How
and
about
just,
the date, Wednesday, 11th?
that's fine by me.
We would have everything we need done, and then,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah.
we'll have, yeah, everything should be,
So so if the bid was opened on Tuesday, what would you actually have the next day on Wednesday? I mean, Wednesday's fine by me,
yeah, the bid tab and recommendation to award.
but, okay, all right, that
Yeah.
quickly. So we vote on the recommendation to award, is that
So
how
I
it
would
works?
make a recommendation to
Right.
the board, you know, to award the Waterworks bid to the lowest, most responsible bidder. Yeah.
And then we do that, and then the contract comes in later after you
Yeah,
make sure everything's...
I'm trying to think, I have to go back. And two, at that time, you can also, you know, so we don't have to bring it back at the board's pleasure, I can sign
Go ahead
as
and
well.
sign
You can
pending, blah,
authorize,
blah,
yeah.
blah, yeah. Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah.
And I may have to call in, like, I mean, I can be, but I might physically not be in Harwich. Is that okay for a vote?
We need, I mean, really, we need 3 for a
Right, if
quorum.
that's all it is,
Three.
maybe you want to have it your regular Thursday, and I just missed that one, you know.
Well, do the Wednesday, because
Okay.
I'm not sure what my schedule is, and I might not be physically in Harwich that whole week.
All right.
But I could call in.
I
Flexible
see.
schedule, but
This is the last of the Thursdays I've booked before I knew
If we went
Thursdays was a
Following week, the 19th?
I'm on
date,
vacation.
and I'm on
I'm
I'm
vacation.
actually vacationing on Cape Cod that week.
Ah, you're crazy.
I'm staying at Nickerson.
So,
Oh, that's cool.
oh, very
so how
good.
many people could come on the 11th?
Okay.
I can come on the phone,
Yeah. okay.
yeah.
Well, we would, Gary, he'd probably be here, so
Yeah.
that would be a...
I can definitely come anytime, so just maybe have to figure out with Gary what time of day.
Well, I would say 11, his
Okay.
usual number, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, so if we did 11 o'clock on the 11th.
fine by me.
Well, let me, I did have, I want to see
Let's
what.
see what he's got.
Yeah, yeah, don't write it down yet.
Oh, I thought I had some on the 11th, but I just,
You
see,
clear?
no, we're good.
All right, so we'll do 11 a.m. on the 11th.
What time's your bid
Oh, I
opening?
do have some on the
Oh.
11th.
No?
I have a department head at 1,
Oh, we'll get done.
Yeah.
IMA meeting
Be quick.
at 8. We're good. I'm good.
You're good.
Sorry, check 2 calendars.
Okay, all right, so that's the next meeting. 11 o'clock on the 11th of August. All right?
All right.
Any open forum? Nobody's here. All right, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor? All
Aye.
right, it's unanimous vote. Thank you. You know, I have to say,
Are we off?
Is it the stop button or is it?